And so today on this channel, we're going to sort of delve into type 1 diabetes. But we're not going to talk about care or something because I've got a special guest today who I'll introduce in a minute. But um, I think it's important. So for me, I always say, you know what, type 1 diabetes, for that matter, any chronic disease, probably sits on three platforms, right? Or three planks. I always say self-management, peer support, access to trained professionals. And the NHS is always forever busy trying to get you more access to trained professionals, and then you don't have enough trained professionals, so you end up having any professionals without the necessary training, and it's a mess, which is also ironic because, as I've said many times before, to be perfectly honest, what you'll find is that 99.98 or even 99.99%, if you've got chronic disease, you're on your own. So that trying to do better with that 0.01% is, well, it doesn't give you the marginal benefit, it doesn't give you the benefits that you need. So self-management and peer support is where it sits. And the type 1 diabetes community are brilliant. I've been absolutely brilliant at it. They're a fabulous group. They get together. And I love seeing that. And part of that also is having role models, right? People who have gone on and achieved things in life. And that is not to say belittle anybody in their life, but I think if you are we talking about celebrities, talking about people who have gone on and become movie stars and sports stars and stuff. And the fact that they can come out and say that, look, I've got type 1 diabetes and this is what I've done. I think that's fabulous. You hear the stories of people who have gone on to achieve, and they're no less in the flying planes and playing this and doing this, or even running their household and looking after three kids. Everything amazingly important. But it's also there's something when you see somebody like, as I always say, like Nacho, who's plays for Real Madrid, he's won Champions League, got type 1 diabetes. So what? Wasim Akram, amazing cricketer, type 1 diabetes, nothing a big problem. So I think having role models is great because I think a lot of the kids who develop type 1 diabetes, and the society's got enough stigma, which we can talk about for length, and I'm sure one of the episodes will be dedicated towards that as well. But in that context, I think it's very important to have role models. And today's episode, we want to have a chat with the role model in that sort of community, but also is famous, and we know a lot about him. So some of us, well, at least some of us definitely do, and the work that he does. But he's also a very good friend. Over the course of time, we've got to know each other. It's what 7, 8 years since we've known each other, and over the course of time, it's become a really good friendship. Whenever I ask, he's there, and we chat, and it's lovely. So there we are. So today it's going to be about him. Right. So today we have, well, if you in the world of type 1 diabetes, you will know him. But if you beyond the world of type 1 diabetes, you know him as well. Now, a very good personal friend. And we have a funny story, don't we? But before that, welcome and thank you for sparing some time, James. That's fabulous. Really kind of you.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure, Parth. Always a pleasure. Never.
So I was going to basically, I think the whole audience who listen to this will know you who you are and stuff. But the funny thing is, when I first got to know of you, people always used to say, "Oh, have you seen him in Manchester?" And I'm like, "Not really." And then they said, "Have you seen him in Happy Valley?" And I was like, going, "What?" Which I had my sort of reverse moment to that because when I first met you, I remember going like, "So, which Marvel comic character would you like to be?" And you just turned around like, "I actually haven't read them." So I think I had my reverse moment in that as well. But no, thanks for your time, man. I mean, I really appreciate what you do. But before we go on to anything about type 1 diabetes, now, obviously, you talked about Happy Valley, Grantchester, all that. But a big thing for you the last time we caught up was this production company you've opened, isn't it? And correct me if I'm wrong, it's called Rabbit Track, but there's a history behind it, which is why you're so connected to it. Is that right? Is it fair to say?
Uh, there's a history. Well, there's a history by the name because
Yeah.
my when when I grew up in North Yorkshire, my house had a path which went out the back of the garden. It's called the Rabbit Track, and it's where my parents still live. And it was the path where we were first allowed as children to kind of roam and be on our own outside of the kind of confines of the garden. So it was always a place of adventure, and the kids in the village, we'd all go down the rabbit track. And then as I got older, there was a pub in the next door village, and the rabbit track took me to the pub, a different type of adventure, but still one of kind of expansion and excitement. And so, yeah, it was always a place for me throughout my childhood and now adulthood where I associate it with adventure and stories. And so, yeah, when I had the task of coming up with a name for the company, Rabbit Track Pictures. It's quite a personal one, and it's a bit oblique and obscure, and lots of people are like, "What on earth is the Rabbit Track?" A lot of people think it's the dog around the dog race. You know, you've
Yeah.
got the rabbit.
But it's got a
But
nice,
for me,
yeah.
yeah, but it's got momentum. It's got a sort of mystery and a story to it. And I'm actually in the offices right now. This is our boardroom
Yeah.
for Rabbit Track. We have an office in central London, and we have two floors of this lovely, quaint building near Carnaby Street. So yeah, it's very cool.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if my memory hasn't sort of completely deserted me, some big things coming through. House of Guinness definitely sounds great.
So
King
House of Guinness is
Conqueror.
something I'm in, but I'm not producing. House of Guinness is a big show for Netflix, which is coming out some point I think this year,
Yeah.
and I'm playing a guy called Sean Rafferty, a
Yeah.
full Irish, full Dublin, a period piece about the Guinness family. In the moment it kind of exploded into the international, it became the international brand that it is today in the 1860s. And the other big show coming out is also later this year called King and Conqueror, and that is something that we as a company, Rabbit Track, have produced. So that was in development for many years, and it's about the Battle of Hastings, and it's about William the Conqueror, King Harold Godwinson, and it's the sort of 20 odd years leading up to the battle. So episode 8, it'll all be on the BBC. Episode 8 is the Battle of Hastings, and it's the kind of these two guys who met and became friends initially, and then realized at some point during their friendship that one of them would have to die on a battlefield because that's their destiny. They were going to end up fighting one another until the death. And so the final episode is these two friends standing on the other side, each side of a battlefield, aware that one of them was going to die. And yeah, and it was a long 6 month shoot in Iceland. A nice segue into diabetes was that halfway through the shoot, I moved from injections to pumps,
Yeah.
and you would not believe the ease the kind of relief I felt when because when you're playing someone like Harold, you have layers. I think I have like 8 layers of chainmail and leather, another layer of chainmail. I mean, it just goes on and on and on because the production and the costume designer wanted to make it look as authentic as possible. So not only is that incredibly heavy, but it's impossible when you're wearing all these like jerkins, and is that called a jerkin? But basically it's very, very hard to find skin to inject into. So it's like it takes ages when you're on the side of a very blustery hill in Iceland to do your injection before your lunch break.
Wow.
Halfway through the shoot, I got an Omnipod, and my life changed. Genuinely, it was amazing. I mean, obviously, I don't spend that much time in 8 layers of leather, but when I am dressed up in a period costume like that, I am more grateful than ever for the pump. And yeah, never look back.
So, since we have segued into it, so for the listener, James has type 1 diabetes, which we'll come to in a minute. He's on a pump, on a sensor. Now it is known as the hybrid closed loop. And, I think beyond the technology, I was going to come to it. You've been such an amazing advocate for type 1 diabetes, right? I think what I've always been struck by is the thing you've made it, it's there, but I have my life to
Yeah,
carry on. I want to segue back into something because I don't want to lose the opportunity of that because when we met, we talked about how difficult it was for you to do the play that you did,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because trying to mix it all up, and so again, for those who are listening or watching this, you got shortlisted for one of the Laurence Olivier Awards, which was fabulous. I saw some pictures on
Thanks.
Instagram, you looking very swish, and you also won an award, didn't you? You won is it What's on Stage? I think you won. Is that correct?
I wonder what to say. Yes, you're right. And I forgot that. And actually, that's the one which is voted for by the public. So, I'm not sort of laying claim to the more important award, but anyway, no, I was very, very lucky and touched to be nominated for both. But yeah, there's something particularly gratifying when you win an award which is voted for by the public because that's who we do this for. We don't really do it for the small number, the small community. I mean, it's lovely to have respect for your peers, but yeah, no, it was a mad experience, and that was also pre-pump, so that was injection,
Yeah.
and I did a video on Instagram. If people in the community, the diabetic community, I'm sure some of you have seen it. It was a real challenge because it was 4 hours, and
Mm.
apart from the interval, I never left the stage.
Yeah.
So I had my sensor, and I had a small device which was telling me my glucose, but my Dexcom was on my um, my Dexcom was giving me my numbers, but then I had to react to the numbers in the play. So I would have to find moments where I would wander over to a piece of the set where I knew that there was an injection or glucose, and I would just very surreptitiously in the middle of a speech just be injecting. And it was amazing how few people noticed. You know, I would say to friends, I was in, do you see that I like to do 3 injections during the 4 hours? And a lot of people didn't even notice. And then some did. And I kind of wore it with pride, as I often do with my diabetes. It was like, you know, I'm an actor, I'm a diabetic, and I'm not going to not do my love, the thing I love because of the diabetes. And so it was always sort of quite pleasing when someone noticed. I mean, it was challenging though. I mean, it was, you know, occasionally my sensor would lose contact with the device in my pocket, and so I would be completely at sea. And when your adrenaline levels are shooting up and down, and it was a very physical play. It
Yeah.
was called A Little Light, and you know, I had to. It was just a lot. So we had to find ingenious ways of getting my, because the stage management would have my phone and that would not lose connection, so they would know my numbers. So they would find ingenious ways of when actors had to come on and like in quite intimate scenes or fight scenes, and they'd be like on top of me. They would in between the like the fighting and the grunting and the sort of the kind of physical mess of it all, they would suddenly give me my number 70, you know, 7.2, 7.2, and then they would carry on with the scene. So everyone was involved. There was a lovely feel. Everyone knew I was diabetic. Everyone knew that there was glucose in all the different like nooks and crannies of the set. And bar one night where I had a really bad hypo on stage because my sensor again had lost connection with the device. Bar that one night of 150 shows, I was fine.
So, I mean,
Having
you know what?
having a hype on stage in front of 1,000 people is not something I would recommend to
No,
any
no,
diabetic.
no. But you know what? What is quite odd is how, you become a very good friend over the course of time. There was a professional interaction, obviously. Got type 1 diabetes, I do type 1 diabetes. And my daughter is now into sort of drama and she keeps on talking about you and stuff, which is great. I mean, for her, you have been a very inspiring figure. So I think it's been, so it made me the other day sitting there and chuckle a little bit, going like, oh, every word is intertwined, which is brilliant, which is quite good fun to see. So now, question for you is with the type 1 diabetes, you've done a lot of work for the community, right? Um, what would be your overarching message that because you always seem to be quite open to helping, and you definitely are not shying away in any shape or form. I've got this; it's not stopping me from doing anything. What sort of a message do you tend to sort of leave, or do you get approached by a lot of people who type one to ask you about this, that, everything?
I mean, you're very kind. I do a bit. I don't do. I mean, I think there is no. We love a mutual appreciation session, don't we? You? I mean, there's no one in the country who's done more for that type ones, and you're not even a type one. I mean, there was a lot of people I know who'll be listening
The
to this
job, the
before.
job, the job.
Well, I know it's a job, but it's also, you know, you go far above and beyond, and you do your job incredibly well. And I think, you know, you've saved lives. I mean, no doubt you've given people better lives because people have access to CGM and others, other tech. So on behalf of the diabetic community, thank you, because you know we are all collectively very grateful. My contribution is small and organic. I mean, I don't really. I don't. I think okay, there was a moment when I was really worried. I started out. I found out I was diabetic when I was 22. I started professionally acting when I was 25. So it's all quite sort of early and around the same time. And I remember in those first few years, I was really afraid that I would become the diabetic actor and that people would know me first and foremost as the guy who has diabetes, and
Yeah,
they wouldn't really be paying any attention to
yeah,
my work.
yeah.
That and that made me worried about talking about it publicly. And so I kept it a secret for many
Mm,
years, for a few
mm,
years. I didn't talk about it in the press, didn't talk about it
mm.
publicly at all. And then I was doing a chat show and it got talked about accidentally on the chat show. And like, oh no.
I'm here. I'm here. It's okay.
I just got a phone call. I'm sorry about
That's all right.
that.
That's the fun bit
But
of it. It's organic. The chat,
it
that's fine.
is.
As long
It
as it
is.
wasn't a call from Amazon about becoming the next Bond, which I interrupted with, James.
Brilliant, so brilliant, brilliant. Forces it in any opportunity. No, it wasn't Amazon. I'm going to tell this person I'm going to call them back though. So yeah, it got one second on a very important call on a call with the king. Um, uh, um, yeah, so it got talked about. It got talked about. accidentally, because the person on the chat show didn't know that I was
Mm.
diabetic and then
Yeah.
mentioned it. Or sorry, he knew that I was,
Yeah.
but he didn't know that I had to talk about it. And often, and what happens with chat shows is there's often tabloid journalists in the room, and it was a live studio audience. And that following morning, they ran a story about my being diabetic, which is a bit of a non-story anyway. Anyway, that was a real, because it was slightly forced on me. That was a huge moment because I was suddenly um, in the I was able to talk about it, and it was such a relief. And the immediate response I got, a lot of it was from parents of diabetics, but also
Yeah.
diabetics themselves, just saying, it's so good that there's someone in the public eye talking about it and also showing young kids particularly that you can do what you want, you can follow your dream, you can live a very physical life, a very peripatetic and unpredictable life where I do a lot of travel and I cross time zones. And it's complicated. We all know diabetes is annoying, and it's a frustrating thing one has to kind of deal with, but it shouldn't hinder you. And so I think, and I don't have much social media presence, but the thing I am most gratified by, and is the most meaningful relationship I have, my most meaningful part of the relationship I have with social media is always whenever I post anything about diabetes, the response I get from the community. It's just like it's one of support and gratitude, and particularly parents saying, look, my kids watch what you do and they know you're a diabetic. So that's been amazing. In terms of my contribution, it's been very organic. I haven't done very much, but
So,
I mean,
tell you what,
I'm privileged.
to continue the Mutual Appreciation Society, I'm going to say this because I think you're underplaying how much of a big role model you are, because I think you are, forgetting everything else, you're actually a nice chap, right? Which everybody, whoever talks to you is like, it's a really nice guy. And I think, every single time you come to our talking about diabetes, you've given time to all these kids and their mums and dads. And I think that's meant a lot. So I think they see you as a, look, that's it's sort of like a big role model thing, and I think that's fabulous that you give that time to the community back because it helps us. Don't forget that as
I'm,
well.
sure, but I'm also in that very privileged position where, because of the job I do, and the job has this other part of it, which is
Mm.
about public eye aspect of it. Because most actors don't seek fame; you just want to do the work because you
Yeah,
love the work,
yeah.
being storytelling. But there is this byproduct, which is that you're in the public eye,
Mm.
and so actually, it's a privilege that I get to be able to go and do those talks or do this Zoom, do this chat with you, because um, it is meaningful, and I get a lot of um pride, and also I think the other thing as well is that if you're diabetic, you know that there is a mutual support network. And if you are a diabetic and you haven't reached out yet to
Mm.
diabetics, I think you started this with what would you give advice wise. I mean, look, there is always the advice that you control the diabetes, it doesn't control you, and all those kind of sort of like pithy one-liners that we've all heard from our various consultants. And I've never said this before, and they all mean everything, by the way. They are very, very important. It's true. You
Mm.
you are in control, and I know that sometimes it goes wayward and it feels incredibly frustrating and annoying. But you really should live the life you want to lead, and it's a detail. The one advice I haven't ever given, and I will give now, is if you are a diabetic and you haven't reached out to other diabetics yet, do it, because it's such an important part of our condition, the community. And it's so lovely. Like, you meet diabetics and it's just a one of love and support. If you meet a diabetic on the street, I immediately go up to them, tap them on the back. I see their pump or whatever it might be, their sensor. It's annoying that this Zoe thing has come out because now I can't work out who's diabetic and who's just working out their
Yes.
IBS. But anyway, if you know it's diabetic, you immediately feel a support. It's a mutual support. There's a love. There's an understanding and empathy, and it makes your condition so much more human and humanized and easy to deal with. I was very lucky because my sister is diabetic and my mum is now diabetic, and so we have our own little support network. And I think that's one of the reasons why I felt such ease. I've had a particularly blessed, I guess, like navigation of diabetes, because I've always had two people on the phone whenever I need, and it just makes it so much easier. And so if you're alone and you're diabetic, I implore you, go and reach out to like one of the charities, TAD, your organization. Partha does this amazing thing called TAD every year. There is a community out there which will make it a hell of a lot easier. Do not live as a type 1 without knowing other type 1s.
Wonderful advice, James. So thank you. So I tell you what, we're going to ask you a couple of last questions so we can sort of let you be rather than disturbing you too much. What's
I love
next
it.
for James Norton? What's next for James Norton? Where are you going next?
Um, Next, I've just finished a Guy Ritchie movie, which is coming out, I think, at some point maybe next year. I'm doing House of the Dragon, which is the
Yes. Yeah.
Game of Thrones prequel, which was announced recently, and I'm playing an Ormond Hightower in that. I think that's been announced. I think I can talk about that. And uh, Yes. What else am I doing? I've got some bits and there's lots of things in the fire. This company has multiple projects, like 15 or so, maybe more projects, which we're constantly developing and at various stages of development. So they will come to fruition at some point in a year or in 10. But it's a long and um, complicated but very exciting process, the one of development. So yeah, chipping away at the company. Got a few other film, TV, theatre stuff, which is
You're busy.
also cooking.
You're busy. In
Awesome.
short, you're busy.
Yeah,
So,
but life as well. I want to travel. I want to do some other living. I'm doing a bit more travel, and I would love to do some more charity work. I was so inspired by the marathon this year. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I was thinking about running the London Marathon next year. If a certain job lands, which will keep me in London, I think I might do them. I'll be 40, and I think I should do a marathon. So
Jesus Christ.
that's BC. I know I'll do it for some
You're
diabetics.
40. Jesus, man. What
You
can I
know,
say?
it's incredibly hot because I had to
Yeah.
close the window, and we're in the middle of this heat wave in April, which is insane.
Anyway, so to all the listeners, James mentioned about the TAB. That's in Liverpool this year, 28th of June. So if you're there around, want to come along and be part of that. It's tickets are out there and all that. So you can find it on Twitter and all that sort of links of that one. Talking about diabetes, that's what it's called. So I'm going to wrap this up, James. But as ever. Pleasure, man. I mean, we
It's a
should
pleasure.
we should do all our catch-ups. I'm going to tell everybody a funny story about our catch-ups. Because the last time I met you, I remember James going, "Oh, that's the paparazzi over there," and I was like, "Oh, so what's going to happen?" And I still remember some of my friends going, "Like, do you know what they're all thinking? They're thinking you are his lover or something." I said, "It's all right. I can live with that. It's no problem." So
It did end up in the Daily Mail,
it
though, didn't
did.
it?
We did. My coat. Well, my hair and my coat did. You ended fully. I had my hair and coat in there. So that's fine. We did it all right. So no man, you've been fabulous. I think all the help, and I think we've had a great friendship over the years. So long may it continue. And thanks as ever for all your help and
And
support to the community. It's really appreciated, buddy.
honestly, it's so nice to talk about it. It just the more I have a WhatsApp group as well, and it's growing all the time, and it's everyone on it has type 1 diabetes, and it's
Mm.
so I just so important to talk about it and humanize it and find that mutual
Yeah.
support and acknowledge, like a good therapist will always say, you've got to accept that some of it is going to be hard, and it is, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to accept
Absolutely.
that. The
Absolutely.
worst thing is to be in complete denial and go, I'm going to charge through and I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to, it's something you have to tend to and take care of and give a little bit of your attention to, but always find that balance, not too much attention, don't get obsessive, and most of your attention should go on leading the life that you've always wanted to lead, the biggest, fullest, richest life. And
Beautiful
I think,
words. Beautiful
yeah,
words as ever, sir. Beautiful words as ever. Right. I'm going to sort of end it here, at least the recording. So thank you again for your time, buddy. I was really, really much appreciated. And let's catch up again in London as we do. Uh,
and also Partha claims that this is his genuine studio, which I think it's fake, but he seems to,
this is
he's
where,
telling me
this is where I work, Jim. What are you saying? I can't believe you would say that, right?
that.
Anyway,
I love
buddy. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your
it.
time, buddy. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Partha. See ya.
See. Wow. So there we go. So as I promised you, um, a really good guy. Background type 1 diabetes, such open honesty, talks about the importance of peer support. And he's been a big help to all of us in spreading the message, what life is like. It's a tough life. Type 1 diabetes is just such an unremitting, unforgiving condition. That's you all the time. And as a policy, in a policy role that I do as a clinician, that's pretty much my feedback. What can you do to make life a little bit better? With self, and these sort of things whereby you get to see who the role model is, what they're doing is brilliant. So hopefully there was some good fun. And I think the message that I want to put out to everyone, we'll talk more about it as we go along and we'll bring more guests and we'll talk about what's not working. And I've said this, the NHS is not really good at understanding the value of peer support. People always go like, oh, why is type 1 diabetes care and technology moving? Well, you got to have faith and trust in those living with type 1 rather than creating artificial barriers or basically saying, no, I know more than you. So look at what has been achieved by an attitude of can do from the community. Most importantly, looking after each other. So it's wonderful to watch. And I really, really value the love and support. And I love, learning from. There's so much to learn for everybody in the NHS and health, which keeps on saying it can't be done. And the usual stories, or it can be if you really put faith in understand the values of self-management and peer support and role models, as James has been. So thank you to everybody for hopefully tuning in, listening, spread the word. Always lovely to hear about James. And of course, watch his stuff. He's got some great stuff coming out. And old fans, new fans, we managed to even get a question in about Bond in there. Avoided this, but you never know. We keep thinking he maybe in the mix. It's now a different group in Amazon and stuff. But we shall see. But otherwise, thank you all for your time. And as ever, I'm learning myself through this YouTube podcasty thing. So it's fun. It's fun. So thanks very much for everybody for your time. And we will catch up on the next one, whereby we shall see whether we have a guest, whether we just have a chat, a rant. We'll see where we go. But thank you again for your time.